And here we are with the last video of our top 5 trio videos. We're going to be talking about my personal favorite, as you guys know, top 5 budget decks of this current format post Rage of the Abyss. And like I've said in the past, budget is my favorite because anyone should be able to play any deck of any kind, or at least be able to compete at the same level. Because not a lot of people have as much money as some of these big sponsors in Yu-Gi-Oh! Who are able to afford $1,000 plus decks. Some of them may be able to only afford a $100 deck. Lord knows I've been there. I'm currently kind of in the middle of that, but I think that it should be a fair game for everybody. So let's just go ahead and jump into number 5. So for number 5, I have Tempe Dragon here. This one is a little bit of a stretch because, sure, most of the board breakers are cheap. A good chunk of the Tempe Dragons are cheap, aside from, the main guy, the super rare. He can be pushed to $10 a copy. Sure, that's where a good chunk of the budget is going to go. The chunk of the budget is also going to go in the extra deck, depending on what you want. But there are ways to go around it if you want to not use Little Knight, not use Promethean Princess. Sure, if you take those out, they're going to hurt your chances, especially if you get dimensional barriered. But there are alternatives. You could go into IP Masquerena. You could go into Access Code Talker. The Nightmare cards. Those are relatively dirt cheap. But the point is that you don't need SP Knight, Promethean Princess, the triple tactics. You just need the bare bones Tempe, Core, and board breakers. Those are going to be your main things that is going to swing you to victory. Everything else is just going to be add-ons depending on what you go up against. But like I said, if you have a good amount of board breakers in your deck, you're going to be fine. The one expensive card that I do highly recommend that you pick up is Heat Wave, especially if you are not going to be utilizing any of those other cards. Heat Wave is going to be your saving grace when you go first. I guarantee it. So if there's anything that you need to shell out money for first, it's going to be those. But that's just my personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think. And we're here at number 4. I hate this deck, but Voiceless Voice. Aside from low, the core is very cheap. The deck is resilient, and you can splash it into Drytrons, and you can also splash it in with Melodious. I've seen how that deck functions, and boy howdy can it really drive it home. But yeah, it's at its core, it is relatively cheap. It's going to be a little bit cheaper than Tempe Dragons, I'll give you that. But in terms of overall cost across the board with all decks, it's very easily on the cheaper side. So if you really like ritual decks, or if you really just like pissing off your opponent, I highly recommend you pick up Voiceless Voice. And number 3, this is my personal favorite, but Stun. I know you guys hate Stun, but in terms of people who like things a little bit slower, this is going to be for them. The deck is so cheap across the board. Fossil Dynas, Jougans, Dogmatica card support, the back row, everything is pennies. The only thing that might be expensive is going to be the side deck or the extra deck, which you don't really utilize a whole lot, but it's going to be depend on what kind of deck that you want to utilize. But as far as the cheapest deck on this list, it's definitely Stun, but in terms of combative viability, it's definitely mid right now. And it may hurt me to say that, but, it is what it is. Now, number 2, kind of going along with the Stun, we have Runic. More specifically, the Runic Stun version. Sure, you can utilize the Sprite, you can utilize the Fur Hire, or the Melfies, all that stuff. But that's going to raise the price a little bit further. The Runic core of itself, most of the cards, probably aside from Fountain, Hugin, or the Searcher, every other Runic card is under $1, if not less than 50 cents. And you can get the high rarity versions of those cards too. It's absolutely bonkers. But the Runic Stun specifically, because you can also utilize Skill Drain, which is also cheap, Rivalry, Gozen, The only expensive floodgate would be Synchro Zone, which pushes about $5 each. But even then, it's not that bad. And the extra deck, whew, other than Hugin, it's dirt cheap. You absolutely do not need to put a ton amount of money, break the bank or your wallet for this deck, and you're still going to be able to compete with some of the top decks of the format. Sure, you're not going to be the most well-liked person at your locals or at your regionals, but if you're going there to win, it shouldn't matter. And we're going to get into number 1. If you guys don't know it already, it's Mimig. This, not only was this the bottom of the top 5 in the meta, but it's also the top of the budget. Because I pretty much explained what this deck is, like, for the past few months. It's absolutely astounding how well this deck is able to function, and how well it's able to utilize its resources to combat your opponent and interrupt their plays. It's completely wild. And the Mimig cards, even the new ones, are so cheap. The only real expensive ones, I believe, are going to be the Field Spell, which can range between $8 to $12, so that's about $40 right there. And then the next expensive one is going to be the new recent secret rare. I think it's Big Mimig or something like that, which is pushing about $10 a piece, but that's only... You only need 2 of it, so that's $60 right there. Everything else is like $1 and below. Aside from Master, which I think is 2, but you only need 2 of them. Everything else is $1 and below. And all other support cards and generic support cards, even Triple Tactics Talents, are also very dirt cheap. You can make a relatively meta viable deck for between $100 and $150. The only caveat that you need to know is how to utilize the deck properly. If you can do that, you're on your way to a swift victory with Mimig. This deck is probably the number 1 deck I face online for the past month. And yes, that is with the new support. The deck has so much gas to it that it's completely insane. 90% of the time, I lose to this deck. And I've been using some of the top decks that are currently running around right now. Even Snake Eyes and Asmanias. And I still lose to this deck. I've talked about it long enough, so if you guys don't understand how good Mimig are right now, you are clearly missing out. And I highly, highly recommend that you pick up the core to have it, if not to play with it. But guys, that is it for the budget decks. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please stay tuned for some more upcoming videos. If you guys like this, please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell down below for notifications. And please comment down below what you guys think are some of the cheapest and best decks of the current format. And until then, we'll get you guys in the next one.